Thank you for joining us and finding God in the world of video games. And I'll tell you, if there's something that I like in my gaming, it's choices.
Oh, you mean like, when you get to go to Starbucks and you're trying to choose between like a caramel macchiato or pumpkin spice latte, and you're trying to decide if you want it hot or iced or, frappuccino, and you like it with almond milk, but I prefer oat milk because it has, like that richer, creamier flavor than almond milk does. Almond milk just tastes like watered down almonds kind of. And then you can, customize your espressos and your shots and everything.
Did we get sponsored by Starbucks or something when I wasn't watching?
I'm actually really want Starbucks.
No.
Right
well,
now.
No. So not that. Not anything like that at all. Ever. No. What I was saying was that I like choices in my video games. Because this is, a video.
But you can drink coffee, your Starbucks, while you play.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't even understand half of what you just said. And I prefer it that way. So let's get back to the point about
too much for him.
Choices. So choices are honestly a core part of the reason that I play games. I appreciate the stakes involved when my in-game decisions actually influence not only the individual outcomes within the game, but the ending of the game as well. But now we have WatchDogs Legion, which takes the concept of choice to a whole new level by removing the idea of being a single character in the game and instead allowing us to inhabit almost any character we recruit in the game.
See that middle-aged businessman with, the cheap suit? He can be your new primary character. Get tired of him and fancy yourself as an 8-year-old grandmother. 8-year-old
grandmother.
80-year-old grandmother with nothing but time on her hands and bullets to spend. Super Granny to the rescue! Or, maybe you have always felt that hiding in plain sight is your preferred style. Street magician or secret agent man is definitely on the job.
But, there's some challenges in leaning so heavily into this unique concept because it does run astray of one of the primary rules in writing a successful video game. A compelling, relatable protagonist. And there are typically two schools of thought when it comes to protagonists in our video games. First, you have the classic established hero, like a Master Chief, Lara Croft, Aloy, Solid Snake, or any number of the already developed characters that we get to inhabit throughout their hero's journey.
Or secondly, we play as a user-generated character, such as what we see in franchises like Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and to a certain extent Mass Effect or Fable. But regardless of which style of a developer typically chooses, the connection we feel with our central character is a massive component on why we not only play the game, but we truly care about the choices that are made while we're playing it.
And many times when a company forces us to play as a character that we didn't necessarily plan on playing as, looking at you, Metal Gear Solid 2, Halo 2, Halo 5, Last of Us 2, that can go all sorts of sideways and can have long-lasting negative repercussions. Now, to be fair, neither of the characters that we played as in the first two games of the WatchDogs series were, interesting, nuanced, and compelling characters, and we desperately wanted to see them again in another game. But while the idea that we can literally be any face in the crowd is unique and compelling as a concept, a large part of the reason I stick with a video game through the end credits is because the act of living vicariously through a super soldier, a freedom fighter, or any other heroic adventurer is that barbed hook that catches me and locks into this fish's mouth.
Sure, fun gameplay mechanics and flashy graphics are nice bait, and if you want to land this fish in the boat all the way through to the end game, you have to give me a reason to stay. And therein lies the problem with WatchDogs Legion. In giving me the choice to be any random person on the street, many of which I could already be in real life with, if you know.
Not an 80-year-old grandma just yet.
Or an 8-year-old grandma, apparently. This feeling of fulfilling an epic destiny that I enjoy in many of my games ends up feeling a little more like just being, another nameless, faceless, easy replaceable cog in the machine that will just rotate to another character when I am either no longer useful or suffer a fatal injury.
Well, when my Master Chief character in Halo dies, he comes right back because my incompetence has no bearing on where his story is going to end. He is going to inevitably blow up the Covenant Armada with or without my help. But, when that tough-talking street granny finally meets her match, her story is just over. And then we have to move on and choose another character and continue on with the mission as if she had no longer existed. And sadly, that feeling is all too familiar. Throughout life, people come and go. And while there are a select group of us who get to achieve that massive feeling of being a critical part of the overarching plan of God here on this plane of existence, most of us are relegated to background roles, performing the more mundane tasks in life and watching as others inhabit the lives that we don't even dare to dream of.
It can be easy to feel like we're just another nameless, faceless, unspectacular person in the crowd, even as a child of God. The Book of Acts reads like an epic video game script, with larger-than-life characters such as Peter and Paul, who boldly challenged kings, openly defied the very authorities who put Christ to death, worked mighty miracles, and changed the history of the world with the message of the cross.
But layered within the Book of Acts is more than just the story of these heroic missionaries and their march towards their massive destinies. Even though the full name of the Book of Acts is actually called the Acts of the Apostles, these brief spotlights showcase a local destiny that is just as critical to the saving of souls and the ministries of these more widely known and famous followers of Christ. So let's take, for example, the co-op husband and wife ministry team of Aquila and Priscilla. Now, you're not going to find a lot of people that consider them to be major players in the events of the early church. But when we look at Acts 18, we actually find them playing a pivotal role in the development of a gifted preacher named Apollos. You see that in Acts 18, verses 24 through 27. A certain Jew named Apollos, born at Alexandria, an eloquent man, mighty in the scriptures, came to Ephesus. Then we jump to Aquila and Priscilla's part. It says, when they heard him, they took him aside and explained to him the way of God more accurately. Now, in case you didn't know, Apollos is kind of a big deal. He's actually a big enough deal that when the Apostle Paul was addressing the emerging sectarian division of the early church in 1 Corinthians 1, he actually divided them into 4 different groups or denominations. He said Paul, Peter, Apollos, and Christ. That's in 1 Corinthians 1:12.
Many biblical scholars are divided and consider Apollos to be a highly credible choice as the author of the uncredited book of Hebrews in the Bible. But while Aquila and Priscilla would not seem to become major characters throughout the rest of the book of Acts, their critical intervention during the early development of this mighty preacher influenced his messages from that point forward, and their impact would be felt in his continuing ministry, even as they were relegated to the shadows.
So, maybe that is a little too much name recognition for you to relate to. I get it. Don't worry. I have more. How about someone who doesn't even get their name dropped in the Bible, despite the fact that this guy was actually related to the Apostle Paul? Not only related, he saved Paul's life. So, buckle up. We're about to get as nameless and faceless as you can get. There was a point in which Paul's voice was about to be silenced before he completed many of his most critical writings. And this drama is captured in Acts chapter 23, verses 12 through 21. We won't read the whole thing here. I'm just going to kind of give you a synopsis of it. Paul was going to be murdered long before his missionary journeys were completed and his mission had been fulfilled. And only one man stood in the way of this murderous mob. And his name is, you see, read it through here.
Nameless and faceless?
We have no idea. As a matter of fact, we don't know anything about him except that for a brief period of time, he was instrumental to the continued life and ministry of the greatest missionary possibly of all time.
The nameless, faceless wallflower in the book of Acts took action when his number was called, and his bravery saved the Apostle Paul's life. Not bad for a guy who disappears as quickly as he enters the scene, I'll tell you what. We never find out what his name was, and he never appears again, ever, in any biblical texts. But without the actions of Paul's unnamed nephew, our New Testament is about 13 books lighter, and the world might be a very, very different place as a result.
So now for us, a select few of us will experience the burden and the blessing of pastoring large churches, making a global impact through missionary trips, or ministering to millions through songs, books, or messages. Paul, Peter, Apollos, These guys are the master chiefs and the solid snakes of their generation. But they would never have achieved their full destiny without people like Aquila, Priscilla, or Paul's nephew helping them and preserving them along the way.
WatchDogs Legion is trying to answer the question that has plagued us for thousands of years. Is it the hero that makes the journey, or the journey that makes the hero? And for those of us who have chosen to follow Christ, we know the answer all too well. It is the Lord who decides who will be placed into positions of prominence and who will do the critical labor behind the scenes that keeps the mission going.
The sound technicians, the website developers, the encouragers, the intercessors, those nameless saints who enabled and supported the ministry of Christ without all of the accolades, at least not on this side of eternity. For those of us who labor as this nameless, faceless legion, never lose sight of the reality that we are not measured by our perceived impact, but by our obedience to our calling, regardless of how seemingly small and thankless that part is. You are not nameless, faceless, or replaceable to the one who created and formed you for your specific mission. You are not a random, expendable street granny to the Lord, not at 80 or 8. You are beyond precious to Him. Your mission was chosen just for you before you were even born. And as He said in Isaiah 49:16, your name is literally written on the palms of His hands.